In the 7th year of marriage, Claire contemplated the divorce papers spread across the kitchen table. The apartment was quiet that Sunday afternoon. Daniel had taken Peter, their 3-year-old son, to spend the day at the park. A father-son time before the separation, he said as he left, without looking her in the eyes. Claire sighed, looking at the document that would formalize the end. Her signature was the missing piece. Daniel had already signed 2 days earlier with the same distant expression he wore when paying bills, as if it were just another formality, another paper to be dealt with. They fought about everything now, and about nothing too. A comment misunderstood during dinner, a louder tone of voice when talking about the overdue bills, the way he left the wet towel on the bed after his shower, the way she sighed impatiently when he talked about his tiring day at work. Everything was a reason. Everything turned into a war. It seemed like a silent competition. Who was more indifferent? Who was colder? Who would give up first? And this time, he mentioned divorce. Again. But unlike the other times, when she would beg, cry, and promise changes, this time Claire, tired of trying to mend what no longer seemed fixable, simply said, "That's fine." No tears, no screams. Just the exhaustion of someone who no longer sees reciprocity. But when the papers arrived, the atmosphere changed. It was no longer a fight. It was the end. Concrete. Legalized. The divorce didn't hurt when it was said in anger. It hurt when it became a document. And that weighed on them. Weighed more than any argument they'd ever had. Claire got up from the table and went to the bookshelf, determined to start sorting through some books. The house needed to be divided, just like their lives. She would stay in the small apartment she inherited from her father, the one they rented out to supplement their income. And Daniel would move back to his mother's house, temporarily. The routine had gradually consumed them. The accumulated bills, the fear of not being able to pay overdue bills, the expenses with Peter, the small clothes that kept not fitting the boy who was growing too fast, her salary that barely covered basic expenses, his which had decreased after the company's cuts. It wasn't just about love. It was about surviving. She was tired of him, of the silence during dinner, of his absence in important moments, of the pride that kept him from admitting when he was wrong. He too proud to admit that it also hurt. Claire began emptying an old drawer, sorting what was hers from what was his, postcards from a seaside trip before Peter was born, movie tickets kept as mementos, a watch that no longer worked but Daniel insisted on keeping. They were fragments of life mixed together, difficult to categorize. At the bottom of the drawer among old papers, she found the wedding album. A white cover, already yellowed with time with their names engraved in gold. Claire hesitated. Opening it seemed like an unnecessary form of torture, but something compelled her. With trembling fingers, Claire opened the album for the first time in years. The first photo caught her off guard. She and Daniel on the church steps, smiles so wide they seemed to light up the page. It wasn't the polite smile of formal photos, but the kind of smile that comes from within, that can't be contained. She turned the page and saw the photo of them dancing, Daniel looking at her as if she were the only person in the world. Claire felt a lump in her throat. When did that look disappear? Between the pages of the album, a thin envelope fell into her lap. She didn't remember it. Inside, a faded photo. The 2 young people wearing old paint-stained shirts, smiling in front of the walls of the apartment they had painted together before the wedding. On the back, a handwritten date, the first day in what would be their house. Claire was a nostalgic person. She liked to keep small mementos, but that day the photo hit her like a knife in the chest. She remembered that day, the jokes about who painted better, the promises made between brushstrokes, the way he hugged her when she slipped on the spilled paint. Everything seemed so simple then. The apartment still had those walls, still smelled like home. When did they stop seeing that? The tears were falling freely now. The divorce paper, now a cruel contrast with the photo in her hand, seemed to scream, "Do you really want to erase all of this?" At that time they were young, in love, dreamers who wanted to achieve many things, but none of the dreams had materialized. Real life, with its difficulties, had prevailed. Peter came earlier than planned. College was interrupted in the second year. Daniel's business never got off the ground after he lost his previous job and had to accept whatever came his way. Claire closed her eyes, feeling the weight of those abandoned dreams. Without a second thought, Claire grabbed the divorce papers and tore them up, not out of anger, but with determination. Maybe that wouldn't fix everything, but it was a start. She knew that one of them would have to break this cycle of foolish pride, and she decided to do it for them. She picked up her phone and, with her heart pounding, wrote, "Can you come over just to talk? No fighting. I need to speak with you." He took a while to respond. The clock's hands seemed to move slowly. Finally, the message arrived. "I'm coming. Peter fell asleep in the car. I'll leave him with my mother." The wait was agonizing. Claire tidied up the living room, placed the wedding album on the coffee table, and made some coffee, the way Daniel liked it, strong and with little sugar, which she had stopped making out of sheer stubbornness. When the doorbell rang, her heart seemed to want to leap out of her throat. Daniel entered with an expression she knew well, guard up, ready for another battle. "Where are the papers?" That was his first question. Claire was upset about that, but she knew he was hurt too. This time, however, she wouldn't back down. She pointed to the torn fragments on the table. His expression changed. Surprise, confusion, and something else she couldn't decipher. "Why?" "I found this," Claire said, pushing the album towards him. "Look." Her hands trembled as she opened the page where the faded photo was inside the envelope. Daniel remained still. It was an image of them from years ago, young and carefree, with their clothes stained with paint from the apartment they painted together before the wedding. On the back, the date handwritten, a silent testimony to everything they had promised to be. "Remember?" Her voice almost disappeared. "You said that the colour of the walls didn't matter as long as we were together there." He swallowed hard, his fingers tracing the outline of the photo. "Claire, when did we stop trying?" She didn't hold back the tears this time. "It's not just about money or bills or who was more wrong. It's that we stopped seeing each other. Why do we treat each other like enemies?" Daniel closed his eyes as if the words physically hurt. "I just didn't know how to fix it." His voice cracked. "Every time I saw you tired, Peter needing something, the bills coming in, it felt like I was drowning and pulling you down with me." She touched the photo again, where their smiles were frozen in time. "But we knew how to swim together once. Did we forget how?" The silence that followed was different. Not the emptiness from before, but something fragile and full of possibility. Finally, he pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. "I don't want to pretend everything's okay when it's not," he whispered. And there, amidst the torn pieces of the divorce and an old photo, something within them began to rebuild. They sat on the small couch, the one they bought when they moved into the apartment, and talked until dawn. They spoke of accumulated hurts, unshared resentments, unshared fears. It was as if they were getting to know each other all over again. It wasn't a miracle, but it was a new beginning. For the first time in years, they had been truly honest with each other. The following week, they found a couples therapist who agreed to fit them into their tight budget. In the first sessions, the silence still lingered, but gradually, they learned to speak without attacking. Over time, small changes began to appear. They started going out holding hands again, even if it was just to the bakery. They resumed asking each other how the day was, and really listening to the answer. Daniel began to leave loving notes for Claire to find in her bag. Claire returned to preparing coffee the way he liked. They learned that adult love is not made of grand gestures, but of constancy, presence, and patience. It's choosing to stay even when it would be easier to leave. They discovered together that dreams could be rewritten. Owning a house could wait. The trip abroad might happen when Peter was older. Claire resumed college one semester at a time. Daniel found a better job and began dreaming again of his own business, now with a more realistic plan. And every time silence threatened to return, one of them remembered, "We almost lost each other because we didn't know how to talk." 6 months later, on an ordinary night, while Peter was sleeping in the next room, they were sitting on the living room couch after another tiring day. But now, they were there together, trying to maintain the connection amidst the busy routine. When the phone vibrated in Daniel's pocket, he took it out slowly, looked at the screen, a random notification, and then, as if he had decided something, opened the camera. "Take a picture with me. We need to update another photo of us in a happy moment." It wasn't a request. It was an act of resistance against everything that almost separated them. That night, they took a selfie together, smiling with tear-filled eyes, and printed it at the little print shop on the corner the next day. On the back, they wrote together, "When love chooses to stay, even after knowing the worst of each other, it becomes stronger. Our new beginning, 7 years and 6 months later." The photo was placed on the last page of the album, which was no longer dusty in the drawer, but occupied a prominent place on the living room shelf, as a daily reminder that not every new beginning needs a new love. Sometimes it starts when you choose to look again at someone who has always been there but has stopped being seen. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.